Before the dazzling lights of global stages and the thunderous chants of millions shouting his name, there lived a quiet boy in the city of Anyang, Gyeonggi Province, South Korea. His name was Kim Seokjin. Today, the world knows him as Jin, the oldest member of BTS, a vocalist whose voice has healed millions, whose presence evokes admiration, and whose personality balances elegance and humor in a way no one else can replicate. But what the world rarely talks about is the child behind the idol, the young, bashful boy who never sought the spotlight, who spent his afternoons lost in his imagination, and who once dreamed not of singing on global stages, but of living a simple, peaceful life. Jin was born on the 4th of December, 1992, into a family that believed in kindness, education, and humility. His father, a company CEO, and his mother, a loving presence in the home, raised Seokjin and his older brother in a nurturing environment. While his family was considered well-off, material privilege never defined who Jin would become. In fact, many who knew him during his early years described him as surprisingly quiet and introspective. Unlike other kids who would shout and wrestle in schoolyards, Jin often sat under the trees alone, drawing in his notebooks or reading stories. There was a gentle stillness to his world, a rhythm that didn't require noise to be meaningful. Teachers from his elementary school recalled a boy who excelled not only in academics but in empathy. He wasn't the class clown nor the popular leader. He was the one who comforted the crying student when no one else would. He would stay behind to help clean up the classroom, not out of obligation but out of character. That same nurturing spirit would later echo in his dynamic within BTS. Always the eldest, the hyung, the emotional anchor who made sure others were laughing even when he himself was tired. His early love wasn't music. It was acting. Jin grew up enamored with cinema. He would watch films with wide eyes, analyzing the expressions of characters, memorizing lines, and then reenacting scenes in front of the mirror when no one was watching. At the age of 15, while other boys were chasing sports or games, Seokjin began dreaming about becoming an actor. That dream was so intense that when he entered high school in Seoul, he pursued classes and activities that aligned with performing arts. His favorite films ranged from classic Korean dramas to Hollywood masterpieces. His heart wasn't set on fame, he was drawn to the emotional depth that acting allowed, the possibility of becoming someone else, understanding a different life, and living it through art. But he never told many people about this dream. As confident as he seemed now on world stages, young Seokjin was shy about his own ambitions. Even when a casting agent from SM Entertainment spotted him on the street at the age of 15 and offered him a chance to become a trainee, Jin politely turned it down, not because he wasn't interested, but because he wasn't sure if he deserved it. That humility, some would say insecurity, became part of the complex emotional depth that fans now see in his performances. Eventually, Jin enrolled in Konkuk University, one of Korea's most prestigious arts institutions, majoring in acting. It was there that fate would twist in an unimaginable way. While walking to class one day, another casting agent, this time from Big Hit Entertainment, saw him. His looks were striking, yes, but what caught their attention was his posture, his quiet charisma. He had the aura of a star even if he didn't know it yet. He was recruited not as a singer or dancer, but simply as a trainee with potential. Jin didn't audition with a song. He didn't show off choreographed moves. He walked into the room with raw hope and untapped courage. Training wasn't easy. Jin, unlike most BTS members, had no background in music or dance. Every step of choreography was foreign. Every note was a challenge. But he persevered. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove he was worthy. The same young boy who once stayed after class to help clean now stayed after practice to rehearse longer than anyone else. His transformation from acting student to pop sensation wasn't an overnight miracle. It was years of self-discipline, failure, resilience, and learning to trust his voice. Those who watched his evolution closely have often described him as the soul of BTS. While others may shine with explosive talent, Jin radiates with something deeper: sincerity. He doesn't command the stage, he invites you into his world. He doesn't beg for attention, he earns it with honesty. Even as global fame wrapped itself around BTS, Jin never forgot where he came from. Interviews often saw him smiling fondly when asked about his childhood. He would mention eating mom's kimchi jjigae, his close bond with his brother, and how he missed the quiet of Anyang. In moments when the cameras weren't rolling, staff observed how he'd treat everyone on set with kindness, just like the boy who once comforted classmates in the schoolyard. And yet, the acting dream never fully vanished. In fact, there have been whispers in the industry that Jin still harbors the desire to act one day, this time on his own terms. Industry insiders have revealed that major Korean directors have reached out to him over the years, but Jin has always been selective. For him, acting isn't about fame, it's about truth. He's waiting for a role that resonates deeply, something that lets him return to his roots not just as an idol, but as the boy who used to reenact film scenes alone in his bedroom. What fans don't often see is how much of Jin's early life has shaped the man he is today. His humor, his poise, his emotional intelligence, they're all echoes of the boy from Anyang who saw the world through a lens of compassion. Even his stage persona, worldwide handsome, though often used humorously, is not born from arrogance but from a desire to make others smile, to turn awkward moments into laughter. It's his own form of performance, one that reflects his childhood fascination with role-playing and storytelling. The story of Jin BTS is not just the story of an idol. It is the story of a boy who could have taken a different path, a path to acting, to anonymity, to something entirely different. But fate, paired with courage and a quietly burning passion, led him to music. And the world is all the better for it. Still, one can't help but wonder, what if he had taken that first offer from SM Entertainment? What if he had become an actor instead? Would the world ever know the softness of epiphany? Would armies ever have cried to moon? Would he still have found a way to touch millions of hearts? The truth is, Jin was always meant to shine. Whether through a screen or a stage, whether with a guitar or a script, his spirit would have found its way into people's hearts. Because beyond the idol, beyond the performer, lives a soul driven by sincerity. So the next time you see Jin laugh, or perform, or simply sit quietly at an award show, remember, you are not just looking at a superstar. You are witnessing the legacy of a shy boy from Anyang, whose journey is a reminder that dreams can bend, transform, and still come true, just not always in the way we expect. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes Jin's story the most beautiful of all. But the path to becoming Jin BTS's silver-voiced vocalist, their unshakable hyung, their comedic gem was never marked by blind ambition. It was carved by a quiet resilience, one that began long before fame touched his life. Even when classmates teased him for being too quiet, for zoning out into daydreams or staying in during lunch breaks to read alone, Seokjin never retaliated. He wasn't the type to raise his voice. He simply let time speak for him. That gentleness didn't make him weak, it made him timeless. At home, his family knew how special he was. His mother, especially often described by Jin as the source of his good looks, was a grounding force. She encouraged his curiosity, let him play with fashion, and often smiled when she caught him rehearsing silently in front of the hallway mirror. She never mocked him for his dreams. She saw them. And his father, a high-powered businessman, didn't pressure him into corporate expectations. Instead, he showed by example what hard work looked like. Jin internalized those lessons deeply. And when his chance came with Big Hit, he didn't grab it with reckless excitement. He stepped toward it with cautious hope. The Jin we see now on award stages, confidently wearing luxury brands, dazzling cameras with model-like elegance, laughing with disarming charm, he wasn't always like that. Confidence was earned, not inherited. In his earliest trainee days, Jin was often behind others in skill. He had to build his foundation from scratch. He would practice vocal exercises until his throat burned. He would rewatch his dance videos over and over, cringing at his own mistakes but never giving up. He knew he was different. The other trainees had years of preparation. He only had desire. Yet, that desire was enough. That fire inside him, the same fire that glowed when he first watched a film and imagined himself as the lead, never died. It simply took a new form. On stage, he learned how to act again, not in scripted dramas, but through music. Songs like Epiphany, Abyss, and The Astronaut became his monologues. His stage performances turned into confessions. His live vocals during Moon or Yours weren't just demonstrations of vocal control. They were windows into his soul. Perhaps the most beautiful twist of fate is that Jin never abandoned acting. He simply brought it with him into the world of music. His childhood dream didn't vanish, it evolved. And now, when he steps on stage with subtle expressions, with storytelling in every gesture, every eye contact with the audience, it becomes clear that the shy boy from Anyang didn't disappear. He grew up, he matured, he stood tall. But he never stopped being that boy who believed emotions could change the world. Even when Jin jokes on variety, shows or declares himself worldwide handsome, the echoes of his gentle upbringing remain. His kindness is never performative, it's instinctual. And that quality, so rare in a world addicted to clout and noise, might just be the most important part of his legacy. For fans who followed Jin from the early days of BTS, there's always been a sense of intimacy. A feeling that, behind the superstar persona, there's a deeply real person who still flinches at sudden attention, who still stammers when talking about his feelings, who still gets nervous before going live. And they're right. Because while BTS has given him a global platform, the boy named Kim Seokjin never changed who he was. He simply embraced who he could be. So much of his childhood remains hidden not because he's ashamed of it, but because he cherishes it. He's never been the type to overshare. He lets the music, the moments, and his quiet gestures do the talking. And maybe that's why his story hits so deeply. It's not one of rebellion, tragedy, or defiance. It's a story of transformation without loss of self, of fame without ego, of talent without arrogance. In a world where loudness often overshadows substance, Jin's quiet strength reminds us of something powerful, that even the most introverted, bashful children can one day command stadiums not by being someone else, but by finally embracing who they've always been. That is the legacy of the shy boy from Anyang. And in the fleeting moments where he speaks of his childhood, you can sense the gratitude in his voice. He doesn't over-romanticize it, but there's a subtle fondness that lingers like a melody that refuses to fade. He recalls his school lunch routines, his modest room with posters of his favorite anime characters, the smell of books he used to read under dim lights, and the gentle hum of the city of Anyang outside his window. These memories don't simply make him nostalgic, they ground him. It's this grounding that separates Jin from so many celebrities who lose themselves in the whirlwind of fame. At his core, Jin remains tethered to the boy who once feared phone calls, who struggled to assert himself, who found more comfort in stories than in spotlight. Even now, with luxury brands chasing him and global stages awaiting his presence, Jin finds joy in cooking alone in his kitchen or gaming quietly with his friends. He is, in many ways, unchanged. The turning point of his life may have been when he was streetcast by Big Hit Entertainment. A scout had seen something in him, an aura, a presence, or perhaps just raw potential. And while many boys would jump at such an opportunity with blind excitement, Jin hesitated. He asked questions. He thought about his path. He considered how his parents would feel, what it would mean for his education. That hesitation was not fear, it was maturity. He eventually joined Big Hit not as a polished trainee, but as a blank slate. He wasn't a trained singer, nor a dancer. He was a young man who had once dreamed of acting, of expressing stories through character and emotion, and now, life had thrown him into a new form of storytelling. Music. There were tears in those early days. Self-doubt. Pressure. Mistakes. But Jin endured. And he never let his silence be mistaken for weakness. He listened. He absorbed. He grew. The other members of BTS would often remark how Jin carried the group emotionally, not because he was the loudest or the flashiest, but because he was the most stable, the one who stayed up late to cook for the team, the one who cracked jokes to lighten the mood, the one who, despite being the oldest, never pulled rank but instead nurtured the group with quiet loyalty. That, too, was rooted in his upbringing. In the conservative neighborhoods of Anyang, boys like Jin weren't encouraged to cry or show too much emotion, but he defied that silently. He felt everything deeply, he just didn't always say it out loud. That's why when he finally released Abyss, a deeply personal song he wrote during a time of emotional burnout, fans were left breathless. For the first time, he peeled back the curtain entirely, revealing the quiet sadness he carried even in moments of success. And it all made sense. The child who once feared being misunderstood was now pouring his truth into melodies heard by millions. That is not just growth, it is poetic justice. When Jin walked across the graduation stage at Konkuk University, earning a degree in acting, it was a quiet nod to the boy he once was. He never abandoned his dreams, he simply honored them in new ways. Whether in a ballad, a behind-the-scenes moment, or a fan interaction, Jin has become an actor of life itself, portraying a man who never gave up on kindness, empathy, or vulnerability. Today, fans look up to him not just as an idol, but as a symbol, a reminder that you can be gentle and still be strong, that you can be soft-spoken and still command a crowd, that you can come from a quiet town like Anyang unsure of yourself and still one day change the world. So, the next time Jin stands on stage, surrounded by flashing lights and screaming fans, remember, Behind the tailored suits and the luxury jewelry is a boy who once walked home alone, with his backpack swinging behind him and dreams too big for his town to hold. That boy still lives inside him, and it's that boy who made Jin into the man the world now loves. Because Seokjin's story isn't just one of fame, it's a story of authenticity, a story of finding strength in stillness, of embracing your past without being trapped by it. In the quiet corners of Anyang, a legacy was born not in fireworks, but in whispered dreams. And now, those whispers have become a symphony.